Welcome, my beautiful friends. This is a Time to Care the Caregivers podcast. I am thrilled because today I have with you Danielle Southwick. She is a grief expert, and I'm pretty sure she's going to share more about her story. But what I love about her is that she has made so much out of grief and she has built so much support for other people like you and me. So I am really excited to have you here today. Welcome, Danielle.
Hi, welcome. I'm so happy to be here. It's so good to be with you, sharing this space together. It's always good to see you. I love it. This is exciting.
I we always say that we're gonna talk about something particular, and then we just deviate from to 1,000 other topics.
That's when you know it's a good relationship where you're just like, you could just talk about whatever comes top of mind, and you're just like, oh, yeah, about this thing and that thing. And so, yeah, it's good. It's good. It's always good to see you. My heart is so happy whenever we get to share time together. So this is good. And I'm excited to like share with your audience too about grief and what it is that I do and how I got into it and all of those things. But um, it's more than just sadness. And I think that's important because a lot of people think that grief is just happens when somebody dies or when divorce happens, but it's actually a plethora of different things that we can experience in life where grief is applied to. So if it's okay with you, I'd love to start with just like my definition of it and what I've learned.
I would
And
like
then
to
we can.
start with you telling everybody who you are.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I like that too. That sounds good. Well, I'm Danielle Southwick. I am an advanced grief recovery specialist. I am certified through the Grief Recovery Institute based out of um, Indiana, Idaho. I think it's Idaho. I always said Colorado for like the longest time in my career, and it's not Colorado. I don't know why I mixed that up, but Idaho. And I maintain credentials with them yearly. And so this is actually something, the grief recovery method is something that I needed originally as a griever myself. And at the time, I didn't call it grief. I just said I was overwhelmed, right? I had a lot of conflicting feelings over things that I had experienced. And some loving, generous, kind friends said, hey, we think you should take this course. It's 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it was at the time. And I was like, how is this going to help me? And I did. I showed up and I was like super skeptical about it because I'm like, how is grieving these losses like going to help? I don't understand. But I remember my instructor just like being loving and kind to me and just saying, just trust the process, do the work, show up for yourself. And so I did. And surprise, surprise, it worked. I was like, 3 days later, I was like, whoa, I'm not carrying the hate around for this person that I had just, done the work on. After all these years, I don't hate this person anymore. And I was like, well, okay, if this works, if this tool works, like I just proved it did for myself, maybe it'll work on all these other losses that I've experienced. And so I spent probably a good 8 to 12 years just doing my own in-depth heart work for myself because I needed this tool. And the more I grieved, the more space I was creating to be present for my family, for my husband and our friends and my coworkers and the people around me. More space in my life for the joy that I had, right, and my emotions and all that. And so I was like, okay, it works. The work works. Like I just have to keep this tool sharp. And so eventually, I got to a point where I met up with one of my instructors. And there were times of rest in between. There wasn't like a full 12 years of every day of my life I was grieving. It was like, okay, do some heart works, do some deep work, take a rest. And when my body was ready, when my brain was ready, like go back, do some more, take a rest. And so I finally went to my instructor and I almost whispered it. I was like, I think I need to teach this. And they were like, yeah, we think so too. So, like, here are the steps. Here's how you get trained. Here's how you get certified. And then I did that nights and weekends for a long time, just helping people. I was working full time, so I didn't really treat it as a full business at that point in my career. I was just helping others because I loved how this helped me. And then it got to a point where I was deciding on what like my next career step was going to be. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to start this as a business. And so I quit my full-time job and took a risk and took a bet on myself. And, it's been about 2.5 years now of building this as a business and helping others and giving, creating more resources and just trying to normalize what's already normal, because it's normal. Grief is normal. It's normal, and it's whatever reaction you're having to it. And it applies to any type of loss or change that you can experience. So I'm out here talking about the thing that nobody wants to talk about, and excited about it because it works.
I find it most of the time people don't even realize. I don't know for what reason. I've been surrounded by friends who have moved to other places. They have relocated, moved to other countries, other cities, and all of them without a question. Like they have, like I just see them like suffering. It is
It makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And I have connected with friends that I hadn't connected for many, many years. And they come and ask me, how did you do it? And how have you done it so many times in your life? And just building that resiliency, like you have to grieve the fact that you're leaving somewhere else, you're doing something else, you're leaving the home where you live, you're leaving your friends, you're leaving your activities, so it is more than that.
When we think about grief, right, we think about what I like to look for is the conflict. Where's the conflict? Because grief is much broader than a one-time experience. It's really, if you think about it, it's conflicting feelings when something changes or ends that's familiar for you. So you have relationships to people, to places, to houses, locations, finances. You have a relationship to these things. Your identity in your career, or as a mother or a wife, right? You have these relational connections to these things. And so anytime your relationship to one of these things changes or ends, and you have conflicting feelings over it, that's grief, right? And so think about that, and like, moving makes a lot of sense, because there's actually like 3 different main areas of loss. There's tangible losses, and death, of course, is in there. Divorce is in there. Employment changes, marriage, moving, graduating, like all these big life changes. These are tangible things. And I think about moving, like when we bought our first home, right? And we moved from our apartment to a home for the first time. We were really excited. We were happy. We were like joyous that, like, look at all the hard work we put into this thing, and here's some of the fruit of it. And like, there were so many unknowns with it, but there was also sadness and disappointment and a little, I guess, like for me, when I think back on it, it was like, I don't know if it's disappointment. I'm trying to find the right emotional word for it. It's just like a loss around it, because I had these hopes and dreams about that place that were never going to happen. And at the same time, I was dreaming forward about my house, but I was losing my neighbors, right? I was losing the way I went to work and the places I shopped at, the familiar things. And so to look at that as a whole and say, yeah, this is an exciting part and time in my life. This is a major change that I'm experiencing, and it's okay to hold the complexity of the conflict, which is, this is sad, and saying goodbye to a place that was safe and secure, and my first apartment with my husband, like all these great memories, and all these things that happened in that place. And I'm saying hello to something new. and a new place for new memories. So yeah, there's conflict in moving. And that's a type of loss that many people don't think about.
Yeah. And I believe every change represent losing something, even if the change is positive. um I'm a very practical person, and people usually give condolences for certain things. So your
Mm,
parents are sick, like, oh, I'm sorry that they're sick, I'm sorry for your loss if someone died,
mm,
I'm sorry for, like, all these. If you're sick, if someone dies, if you're in an accident, if you're in a divorce, like, all these things are perceived as something negative and people support you. But then you have all these
mhm,
other things that people regard as something positive,
mhm,
and they still represent loss and change, and it is
mm.
hard.
Yeah. 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 And sometimes when we hear those statements intellectually, they might be true. Intellectually, that might be true for the situation, but grief is the conflict of two emotions or more. So you can't heal grief with intellect. You have to actually sit in the feeling of it and experience the feelings of that you're experiencing, let it come up and out. And so sometimes what can happen is when people aren't attuned to their own emotions or their own capacity for emotional intelligence or like that resilience for themselves, when you present to them that depth of emotion over the grief that you're feeling, their best answer for you is like, oh, here's something intellectual because I can't really handle your emotions, right? That's really the statement, the message that comes across is like, just can you contain that for me, please? Because, like, they're in a better place, or there are more fish in the sea, or whatever the intellectual statement's happening. Um, it's a statement of intellect and not emotion. And to really define somebody that like can sit with you with the emotions and to be that for other people and just like, man, what did that feel like for you? Okay. Let me be here with you in that. Tell me more. Right. And that lands very differently because that opens up capacity and space to be seen and to be known.
Yeah, and you probably can be very happy about a new home. It's still it is still overwhelming packing and unpacking.
Mhm.
It is still
Absolutely.
it is still overwhelming figuring out selling a house,
Mhm.
saying goodbye to a place where you had so many good memories potentially.
Mhm.
Um and there are so many other things. So, yeah, I think it is very important to make everybody aware of of these, and that
Mhm.
it's not just something that you go when you have, I don't know if negative loss would be the right word, but something that people regard as something
Sure,
negative.
sure. I would say socially acceptable losses, right? Death and divorce. Well, okay, yes. And there's so many more. So we just even touched on just the tangible ones. But then there's another bucket called intangible losses. And those are like those losses of internal things, like losses of safety and trust and identity, or loss of control of the body, or powerlessness, right? Or losses of approval, right? All losses of faith. Like I can go on and on. Like there's all these different types of losses that we can experience in our time here on earth, right? As in our experience as human beings,
Mhm.
loss of independence, right? That need to be grieved also. And then you have that third bucket of like the disenfranchised losses. I like to say that these are the losses that nobody likes to recognize. So like, I don't know if you've ever had a time in your life where you followed a celebrity for like a long time and like you really identified with them, and maybe you were listening to their music or the art that they created or whatever it was, or like it was an author, something that you were emotionally tied to, and then but you've never met the person and then they die, right? Or they end their career, or something big changes. That's a disenfranchised loss, right? You have a relationship to them through their artwork, through their creation, but you've never met them. Or like maybe grieving somebody you only knew online, where suddenly someday, maybe you're part of a guild or, a D&D group or whatever it is. And then someday you're just like, you never talk to them ever again, right? You had a relationship to this thing that was important to you. Mental health is another one that's really disenfranchised, or Alzheimer's, dementia, right? People incarcerated. Like these are losses that are complex. They have so many different parts to them, and they still are worthy of being looked at and being discovered what's in there, right? And being heard and respected and being witnessed. I think that's super
Mhm.
important to say, slow it down a little bit and say, what am I feeling here? Or what am I not trying to feel in this? And putting some language to it is important.
So, how do you start discovering your losses and all the
Sure.
things that you need to grieve in life?
It's a big question. Um, well, we could talk about some of the um, emotional components of it, and how it can show up emotionally. And we could talk about some of the physical components of it, of how it's showing up. But yeah, let's go there. Actually, I'm just like deciding this as I'm talking about it. Um, so some of the signs of unresolved grief. So when we talk about unresolved, like what's unresolved for you still, right? There might be like glaring things of like, oh, I have an estrangement from a family member, or I experienced this traumatic event, or I, moved 17 times before I was whatever, and I've never even slowed it down to think whatever. There could be some obvious ones for the listener, right? Like, oh yeah, here's my story, right? But
Mhm.
here are the points of it that are not that are incomplete. But when we look at that, there's the things that in that relationship you want to discover three main parts. And these three main parts are made up of what's unresolved. So the first part is the things that you wish you had said or done different, better, or more in that relationship. Right? I wish I had showed up for them better. I wish I had, not said this thing or whatever it is. The things that you wish in the relationship that you had said or done different, better, or more. The second part that you want to try to discover, when you're looking and reviewing a relationship, a loss that you've experienced, is what are the hopes, the dreams, and the expectations that you had of that relationship? Did you hope that it was going to continue, right? Did it not come to fruition the way that you thought it would, right? Did it end abruptly? Did you wish that you had more time with the person, or the loss that you had, or maybe you didn't, right? It can kind of be expressed in these two ways. Before I jump there, I'll give you the third. The third one is communication of emotional nature that is undelivered. So whether you wanted to say something and it was never heard by the person, whether it was said and dismissed, or devalued, or not given space, or whether you've never like really thought about it and actually said it. Those are kind of like the three big areas of discovery that make up unresolved grief. And so if we look at that as like the the, the broad picture and we narrow down into it, it can kind of feel like this: the feeling of reaching out for someone or something that's always been there for me, only to realize that when I need them one more time, they are no longer there. And grief can also feel like this: the feeling of reaching out for someone or something that's never been there for me, only to realize when I need them one more time, they are still no longer there for me. So it's this complexity. How does that land for you?
That's a mic drop. It's, yeah, like, and I think you expect some things, but sometimes you don't. And I don't know, for example, with Alzheimer's and dementia, there are times the patients don't even notice that they're losing, but the families are.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge disconnect, because you're expecting your parent to be there, or your loved one. You're expecting them to be how they were, but they're not. There's someone different.
It's really delicate to grieve someone who's still alive. And I've done a lot of that work with people that I really love deeply and care about, but who are unable to show up for me in ways that I long for. And it requires grieving. It really does, to sit in that complexity and to ask yourself, what am I feeling around this? Like, what do I need from them that they're unable to give me, whether that's due to health or due to their inability to grow as a person, right? Their unwillingness to grow as a person. So if you're thinking about it and you're like, okay, well, am I grieving? Right? There's some physical signs and there's some emotional signs. Some of the emotional signs are like depression, right? And we say that word, and how I like to frame that is like persistent sadness or persistent hopelessness, right? And sometimes what can happen is, if we live in our grief for so long, and I talk about everyone has baggage. You just have to figure out if it's checked or carry on, right? Checked meaning you've done the work, you've sent it to its final destination, whether you're gonna, store it or take it to the curb, whatever you got to do with it, right? Or if you're still carrying it with you. And for the longest time, I had the most beautiful set of matching luggage, probably 12 sets that I was carrying with me. And I was just like, I'm strong, I got this, right? But it was all this unresolved grief that was weighing me down and holding me back. And it caused me to have a lack of interest in the activities that I cared about. It caused me persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness, right? And so that's a sign, like something's going on, right? Maybe you're out of the moment, right? You're struggling to stay present with yourself and with others. You feel a little disconnected from your surroundings, lack of energy, right? Overreactions, like those intense emotional responses, like maybe you stub your toe and you're like, this is the end of the world. Like, oh, okay. Like, maybe you're a little prickly, on edge, you're like really super irritable, right? Easily agitated. The smallest bit of stress can like just send you over the edge. Or perhaps you're isolating, right? Or then maybe there's some unwanted behavioral patterns, right? Drinking, doing drugs, overworking, whatever it is, compulsive things that are trying to suppress or distract you from this unresolved grief in your life. And perhaps at that point, it's turned into some health issues too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are like the emotional things that are like little red flags to say, hey, something needs to be paid attention to. And then there's your physical responses. I don't know if you want to jump in there. You good? Okay, there's your.
Yeah, I was going through those, and yeah, like, I don't know if you need support for all the grief that we go through. Obviously there are times like, I don't know, your favorite shoes broke, or Um, I was laughing because I had this shirt on my trip that I just came from. I was wearing this shirt and like it needed to go.
Mm.
So my sister sent me this meme about like how you use a shirt. So you start wearing it, like once you buy it, you start wearing it like for OnlyFans events, and then at the end of its life, you're using it to clean bathrooms or whatever, or dust surfaces.
Right.
So you have like from the super fancy all the way to I'm using these to
Yeah.
to clean um bathrooms or whatever. So probably you don't need, you deal with that
Well,
grief easily. Like it will
well,
go.
let me ask you this, right? Because you've had a relationship to that shirt, right? It's been with you. It's served a purpose that it was meant to serve. It holds memories for you of
Yes.
different things, right? So I don't like to like compare losses, right? My losses are different and separate than yours because we are uniquely individuals, right? That even the same siblings in the same household, like are going to experience life from their perspective, and it's going to be different even if we have similar experiences. I'm going to internalize and understand it from my perspective different than their perspective, right? And so if that's meaningful to you, yeah, it might not be a long thing if you have like a long grief if you have the tools to do it, but there are probably some things in there that if we explored that you would want to say to that shirt, that you would want to express some significant things that maybe have never been expressed to somebody of like, hey, that shirt was really meaningful to me because it was with me here and there, and like I really appreciated that, and like it's a letting go of, it's a saying goodbye to,
Yes.
right? And with gratitude, with the things that were never said to it. You probably didn't look in your closet and be like, hey, shirt, I like you so much. Like, you're the best. You have served me. Like, I appreciate you. But like, maybe there's something in there that you need to say to it. Like, acknowledge the loss that's happening, right?
Yeah. I was a professional organizer for some time, and
Mm,
that's how I would treat, especially with children. Um, with the toys that they wouldn't play with anymore, they were not interested, but these um they have had this amazing relationship with that toy,
mm, mhm,
and letting it go, it's thanking that
mm,
object for the purpose that they served for whatever period of
mm.
time, and then
Because
letting it go.
Yeah, because here's where people get kind of hung up sometimes. They're like, I can't say goodbye because I don't want to forget the person, right? I don't want to forget the shirt. I don't want to forget the thing. You can't, you're not going to forget it, right? What you're saying goodbye to is the things that you wished were different, better, or more that you had done or said, right? That you're saying goodbye to the hopes and the dreams and the expectations you had of that relationship. And you're saying goodbye to those significant emotional statements, those apologies, those forgives. Those things are just like thank you, or I love you, or I appreciate, right? Those are significant statements that need to be said and experienced and witnessed, right? That's what you're saying. And you're saying, you're wrapping all that up and you're saying goodbye to those things. You're never going to forget
Yeah.
the person. You're never going to forget the toy or the thing that had meaning because it holds meaning. It holds meaning.
Yeah, and some of the things that I would recommend is like take a picture of that object with you and let it go if it was the right moment to let it go. Um, so it's easier to keep a picture than a 3 foot tall teddy bear, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I like
so
that.
so why would you recommend people? Obviously, probably if it's a shirt, they don't need professional services. I would hope so. Um, But what do you recommend people, like once they discover they have, and I think we have covered so many topics in such a short period of time, but what would you recommend people to do or
Mm. Yeah, I hear the question underneath the question. How do you get unstuck? Right?
yes.
How do you get unstuck? If these are all undelivered communications and compound grief that has happened and is cumulative over the years because it stays with you. All of these things, you didn't even hit on like the 6 myths of grief. Like there is more to dive into, but how do you get unstuck? It's a great question. You have to take at least 1% responsibility for your own recovery, right? A small percent. The other 99 will follow, but you have to say, oh, this doesn't mean like taking blame for the situation, but recognizing that you have the agency to change your perspective, take action, and your emotional responses to this thing, right? So you have to acknowledge that there's something here and it could be grief, right? And then it could be associated with one loss or a series of losses, and acknowledging that you need help. The way that you've been handling it this far is like, I like this example. Yeah, I use this metaphor. It's like trying to paint with a hammer. It only makes a
Mm.
mess. You need the right tools. So being curious about it is important. Writing it down is important, giving language to it, but then sharing your discovery. And this is where I say it's important of who you share it with, sharing it with a safe person. But I like to define what a safe person is. It's someone that's going to listen without judgment, criticism, analysis, or advice, right? That could be a trusted friend, a mentor, a grief coach like myself. It's someone that you have to feel comfortable with enough to be honest with yourself in front of somebody
Mhm.
who's going to be a heart with ears for you, right? Who's going to provide validation and support without making you feel alone in the journey, right? And it's someone who's going to give you that space for your emotions so that you can express them freely and authentically, right? So I would say that those are the ways. Acknowledge it, take that 1% responsibility, but then take action on it. Write it down and share it with somebody safe.
That's awesome. Where can people find you, work with you? Because
Yeah.
I know your work is fantastic, and
Thank you.
I I always learn so much from you. So my voice, I'm losing my voice. um
We can grieve that too. Do you need a little bit of water? Okay.
um I'm good. I think it was just
Okay.
a lapse.
I
So
have a glass for that if you need to.
where can people find you, work with you, connect with you?
Sure. The best way is daniellesouthwick.com. I have free educational resources listed on there. I have all the courses that I offer on there, as well as a way to sign up for my newsletter, which is weekly. I provide just my heart, you know. I talk about these topics in depth. I give you some free resources and ways that you can get unstuck. It takes action, though. It takes action. So those are some of the actions that you can do today if you're interested in diving deeper with me. I also have a grief assessment on there. It's a 50-question assessment, and then you get to meet with me for about 30 minutes, and we go over that and we talk about where you might be stuck in your grief.
Well, thank you so much for coming, sharing all your expertise, knowledge, and time with us.
It's my pleasure. It's always nice to spend time with you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. See you later.
Bye.